Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here, bringing you my first reaction and thoughts to the most recent episode of Lower Decks, Crisis Point, which just aired today, this Thursday, October the 1st. Uh, this is a dangerous thing because each week it feels like, for the last couple weeks anyway, I've said this is the best episode of Lower Decks so far. And going into this one, I was a little bit biased because I was like, okay, I'm not going to say that this week, but I can't legitimately follow that because this is definitely, man, as much as I loved last week's episode, and it was very, very good and my favorite up to that point, this episode, there's no way to say it other than it has surpassed last week's episode. This was such an interesting love letter to Star Trek. It felt like, on Star Trek films in particular. So for the first part of this review, I'm going to be spoiler free. I won't get into specifics, but there's a way of playing with these Star Trek tropes, and specifically Star Trek movie tropes, that is just so superbly done in this episode without it feeling like they're making fun of them necessarily. It's just celebrating them and celebrating what a Star Trek film is specifically. And it was so much fun. Not only that, I have long said, if you listen to Positively Trek or Literary Treks when I was one of the hosts there, character development is such a huge thing for me. And last week's episode was fun. It was a lot of fun to watch and I really enjoyed it, but there wasn't a lot of character development. It was kind of more about the wacky hijinks and that sort of thing. This week's episode, we get very wacky hijinks and great plot stuff like that, but at the same time it's also very much a character study, especially for Mariner. We get some evolution of her character development and how she relates to the people around her, and also some surprise stuff with Tendi as well, which I really appreciated. I loved what this episode had to say about her and her experiences. So all across the board, this was an incredibly fun episode. Add to that the fact that the really truly deep cut references, which I'll allude to a little bit on the other side of the spoiler warning, but I will really get into in my deep dive video later in the week. Man, yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about this episode. This is the second week in a row I've actually stayed up late to watch the episode rather than catch it the next day. And both times I'm really glad I did. I've not been disappointed. So watch this episode if you haven't already. If you have watched it, stay tuned for my spoiler-filled review. Or if you don't care about spoilers, go ahead, keep watching. So in this episode, the basic plot is that Boimler is running a simulation with the Cerritos crew, using their personal logs from the past 7 years to craft perfect facsimiles of them, to kind of prepare for a meeting that he has with the captain. And Mariner, finding this out, decides to reprogram it into a film that she's created where she's the villain, and it plays on all of the Star Trek film tropes. We've got so many things here. We've got lens flares going all over. We've got like a slow fly around the Cerritos like you would see of the Enterprise in the motion picture. And you know, all the physics bending stuff that they seem to want to do in the films more so than the television show, that even gets a bit of a nod. And, you know, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the reference to Zahn. Zahn, of all characters. If you don't know who that is, I will get into it on my deep dive video, but he's he's a character that was created for an unaired spin-off or continuation of the original Star Trek series that eventually got turned into Star Trek the Motion Picture, and that character was eliminated. So, like, what a ridiculous deep cut that I absolutely love. And so many other things too. We've got homages, I think, to just about every Star Trek film, with a few exceptions, but some very, very obvious ones in there for sure. The character development. Mariner gets a really great storyline here where, like, at one point in the episode, I'm thinking like it's way over the top. She's gone way too far. She's lost her mind. She's crazy. But by the end, the whole film experience ends up being kind of a therapy for her, and she works through a lot of the issues that she has with her captain. Now, of course, it's a 25-minute episode. The character development's pretty quick. It's pretty rushed, but it's amazing for this show. I wasn't expecting this sort of exploration of the neuroses of that character, I guess. I thought that was a lot of fun. I thought it was very well done. Tawny Newsome playing against herself as well was really great, doing the voices of both, of course, Vindicta, this character that she's created for herself, and the holographic version of Mariner that she ends up fighting in the bowels of the Cerritos after it's crashed on this planet. Great stuff. Tendi I loved in this one as well. Actually, all the characters get really great moments, but Tendi, she's kind of been shoehorned into this Orion pirate version of herself for Mariner's story, and she doesn't like it. She kind of bristles against it because, as she says, not all Orions are pirates. There's some jokes there, of course, that, most Orions are pirates, but, that she's not. She doesn't fall into that stereotype, and it even ends with Mariner apologizing to Tendi for that stereotyping of her, which I really appreciated. Rutherford has some great stuff here too, because he's all excited because there's a holographic version of his boss Billups in this, and he's like, I get to finally tell him exactly what I have always wanted to tell him. And of course you think it's going to be telling him off. You want to tell off your boss, right? That's a common trope. But he ends up telling Billups that he thinks he's the best engineer in Starfleet and he really admires him and that sort of thing. And it really brings the two of them a lot closer, and they develop this really cool relationship. And there's hints that could happen in the real world, but Rutherford, isn't going to talk to him like that because he's too scared, and, Billups is too cool, but, Billups looks pretty lonely. So I think it would be really good for both of them, but oh well. Boimler, of course, has to deal with his impending interview with the captain, and that's the whole reason he's wanted to do this. But by the end of the episode, he discovers that Mariner is Captain Freeman's daughter, and this totally freaks him out because, of course, the holographic Freeman is, if anyone had ever found that out, I would probably fire them because blah, 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 and he's freaking out about this, which, of course, makes his interview with the captain go absolutely horribly. What I'm interested about now is, of course, we're going into the season finale. The next episode is the final episode of season 1. Boimler is now armed with this knowledge. How is that going to impact his relationship with Mariner? What's that going to do? I'm really looking forward to seeing how that all plays out. But this one, there's so much I could go into with how much I loved about this episode, and it just feels like I'm gushing at this point. But there's so many great things. The awe in their faces as they're flying around outside the Cerritos looking at it, and the you can do all kinds of crazy beaming stuff in movies, it doesn't matter. And the crash of the Cerritos, and even the fact that when she changes it into the movie, the aspect ratio changes to like film style, and Boimler even seems to kind of notice that that's happened. Fun stuff, just really fun playing with the fourth wall and playing around with things like that. And the signatures of everybody at the end, a la Star Trek 6. It's just so many great little things that, like, I would have loved to have been in the writer's room as they're coming up with this stuff and just like tossing out these ideas, and they're going, yeah, that's great, let's put that in there, let's throw that in there. Oh man, this show, if nothing else, like, and it's not true, there's way more than just fun, but it is fun as heck. I love this show so much. It's so much fun to watch. But on top of that, like, deeper character studies and character development than I'd ever expected. So yeah, really curious to see where this goes. Like I said, in the season finale, I think they're setting up for some interesting stuff there. I hope that's not just squandered. I hope that is something that will be explored. More than anything else, I have to say this episode was one of the greatest birthday gifts I could have gotten. So yeah, this was great. Excepting, of course, the birthday gifts I did get from my wife, Nikki. I got this guy from her. Check it out. It's the cutest of Borg, right? And this one, Positively Trek, is our podcast, me and Bruce, and my wife Nikki made this amazing water bottle for Positively Trek. I love her. Anyway, Thank you all so much for watching and indulging my little gushing about the stuff I got for my birthday. Thank you to the Patreon supporters for their help in bringing these episodes to you. I really do appreciate it and could not do it without you. Thank you to everyone else for liking, sharing, and subscribing. One more episode of Lower Decks to go. Looking forward to it, but also sad to see it ending, but also really looking forward to Discovery Season 3. I will see all of you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, as always, live long and prosper.